The parking garage smelled like oil and concrete dust, the kind of smell that clings to your clothes long after you've left. Andrew Stone stood beside his daughter's hand, feeling the smallness of her fingers wrapped around his palm, and watched the black Mercedes pull into the executive spot with the kind of precision that screamed money. The engine purred to silence. The door opened, and out stepped Marcus Bellwood, CEO of Bellwood Industries, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Andrew's monthly rent. Preparing and narrating this type of story takes a lot of time and effort. If you like the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch every story of our channel, turn on the bell icon. Andrew had been working as a maintenance supervisor at the Bellwood Tower for 3 years now. 3 years of early mornings and late nights, of fixing broken elevators and replacing burnt-out lights in offices where decisions worth millions were made daily. He knew every corner of this building, every pipe that rattled, every door that stuck. He knew which executives left their coffee cups on the window ledges and which ones actually said, "Thank you," when he held the elevator door. Marcus Bellwood was not one of the latter. But today wasn't supposed to be about work. Today was Saturday, and Andrew had only stopped by because he'd left his daughter Emma's favorite stuffed rabbit, a worn gray thing named Mr. Hoppers, in his maintenance closet on the 3rd floor. Emma had been inconsolable that morning when she realized Mr. Hoppers was missing, and Andrew couldn't stand to see those tears on her face. So here they were in the underground parking garage at 8 in the morning, when the building should have been nearly empty. Emma squeezed his hand tighter as Marcus Bellwood walked past them without a glance, his shoes clicking against the concrete with the rhythm of someone who had never questioned whether the ground would hold him. Andrew started to guide Emma toward the elevator, already mentally mapping out the quickest route to the maintenance closet and back to their car, when Emma suddenly pulled her hand free and ran forward. "Mister!" she called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. Andrew's heart lurched. "Emma, wait!" But she was already standing in front of Marcus Bellwood, her small frame barely reaching his waist, her worn pink sneakers planted firmly on the ground. The CEO stopped, looking down at her with the kind of expression someone might give an unexpected obstacle. Not quite annoyed, but certainly not pleased. "Emma, come here," Andrew said, hurrying forward, feeling heat rise in his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bellwood. She's just—" "Your car will explode," Emma said, her voice clear and matter-of-fact, the way she might announce that it was raining or that she wanted pancakes for breakfast. The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus Bellwood's expression shifted from mild irritation to something harder to read. His eyes narrowed slightly. Andrew felt his stomach drop. This was it. This was how he'd lose his job. Not from any mistake he'd made, not from any failure to maintain the building properly, but because his 6-year-old daughter had just told the CEO that his car was going to explode. "Emma, that's not—" Andrew started, reaching for her shoulder. "I saw it," Emma continued, looking up at Marcus with those wide, serious eyes that made her look older than her years. "In my head, like the pictures. Your car will explode if you drive it. The wires are wrong. They're touching each other when they shouldn't." Andrew's mouth went dry. Emma had always been an unusual child, prone to saying strange things, but this was different. This was specific. And the way she was looking at Marcus Bellwood, with such certainty, made something cold settle in Andrew's chest. Marcus Bellwood studied Emma for a long moment, and Andrew couldn't read his expression. The CEO was a man in his mid-50s, with silver threading through his dark hair and the kind of face that gave nothing away. He'd built Bellwood Industries from a small manufacturing company into a multimillion-dollar enterprise, and you didn't do that by being easily rattled. "Is that so?" Marcus said finally, his voice measured. Emma nodded solemnly. "Under the car. The bad wires. They're hot. They'll make a spark soon." Andrew felt like he should say something, apologize, explain that Emma had an overactive imagination, that they'd been watching too many action movies lately. But the words wouldn't come, because there was something in Emma's voice that he recognized. The same tone she'd used 2 months ago when she'd told him not to take the highway because the road was angry. He'd ignored her then, thinking it was just childish fancy, and they'd hit traffic caused by a massive pileup. They'd been delayed by 3 hours, but they'd been safe. And there was the time, 6 months before that, when Emma had refused to let him put her in the swing at the playground, insisting it was going to break. He checked the swing, found nothing wrong, and put her in anyway. The chain had snapped on the third push, sending her tumbling to the ground. She'd only gotten a scraped knee, but Andrew had been shaken for days. Marcus Bellwood glanced past Emma to Andrew. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No, sir," Andrew said quickly. "I apologize. My daughter, she sometimes says things that don't make sense. We'll get out of your way." But Emma didn't move. She reached out and touched the pocket of Marcus Bellwood's suit jacket, her small hand resting there for just a moment. "You have a picture in there, of a boy. He has your eyes." Marcus Bellwood went very still. Andrew watched the color drain slightly from the CEO's face, watched something flicker behind those carefully controlled features. Slowly, Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small photograph. Andrew couldn't see it clearly from where he stood, but he could see that it was old, the edges worn from handling. "How did you—" Marcus started, then stopped himself. He looked down at Emma with something new in his expression. Not quite belief, but not quite dismissal either. "What's your name?" "Emma Stone," she said. "I'm 6. My daddy works here. He fixes things." "I see." Marcus looked at Andrew, really looked at him this time, as if seeing him for the first time despite 3 years of passing each other in hallways and elevators. "And you're suggesting that my car has been tampered with?" Andrew opened his mouth, closed it again. He didn't know what to say. On one hand, the idea seemed absurd. On the other hand, Emma had never been wrong about these things before. Not when it mattered. "I don't know, sir," Andrew said finally. "But Emma, she knows things. I can't explain it." Marcus Bellwood was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving between Andrew and Emma. Then he turned and looked back at his Mercedes, which sat gleaming under the fluorescent lights, looking perfectly normal and entirely too expensive to be the subject of a 6-year-old's prophecy. "Show me," Marcus said, his voice hard and commanding in a way that made it clear he was used to being obeyed. Emma walked toward the car without hesitation, and Andrew followed, his heart hammering. He felt ridiculous. They were going to look under this man's car, and there would be nothing wrong, and then Andrew would be fired for wasting his boss's time with his daughter's imagination. He could already picture himself explaining to Emma why they had to move to a cheaper apartment, why Daddy didn't work at the nice building anymore. Emma knelt beside the driver's side of the car, her small body folding easily as she peered underneath. "There," she said, pointing. "See? The red wire and the black wire. They're touching. They're not supposed to touch." Marcus Bellwood crouched down beside her, and after a moment's hesitation, Andrew did the same. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight, angling it under the car. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just the undercarriage of an expensive vehicle, clean and well-maintained. But then Emma reached out and pointed more specifically, and Andrew shifted the light. There. 2 wires, one red and one black, twisted together in a way that looked almost deliberate. They weren't just touching by accident. Someone had wound them around each other, creating a connection that shouldn't exist. And the insulation on both wires was worn away at the point where they met, exposing bare metal. Andrew felt his blood run cold. He wasn't a mechanic, but he'd done enough electrical work in his maintenance job to know that exposed wires touching each other was bad. Very bad. Especially in a car, where heat and vibration and the flow of electricity could turn a small problem into a catastrophic one. "Jesus," Andrew breathed. Marcus Bellwood didn't say anything. He just stared at the wires for a long moment, his jaw tight. Then he stood up slowly, pulling his phone from his pocket. His hands were steady, but Andrew could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his breathing had changed. "I need security down here immediately," Marcus said into his phone, his voice clipped and professional. "And call the police. Tell them I need a bomb squad or someone who can safely examine my vehicle. There's been tampering." He ended the call and looked down at Emma, who had stood up and was now brushing dirt off her knees. "Thank you," he said, and his voice was different now, softer, more human. "You may have just saved my life." Emma smiled, a small, shy thing. "Mr. Hoppers told me to tell you," she said. "He said you were important." "Mr. Hoppers?" Marcus asked, glancing at Andrew. "Her stuffed rabbit?" Andrew explained, feeling heat creep into his face again. "We actually came here to get him. She left him in my maintenance closet yesterday." Marcus nodded slowly, as if this made perfect sense, though Andrew was certain it didn't. Nothing about this morning made sense. They stood there in the parking garage, the three of them, waiting for security to arrive, and Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted. Not just because Emma had potentially prevented a disaster, but because of the way Marcus Bellwood was looking at his daughter, with a mixture of gratitude and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. Security arrived within minutes. 2 guards Andrew recognized from his daily interactions. They were followed shortly by Marcus's personal assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Diana Chan who always dressed like she was about to negotiate a hostile takeover. She took one look at the scene, her boss standing in the parking garage with the maintenance supervisor and a small child, and her professional mask slipped just slightly. "Sir?" she said, her voice carefully neutral. Marcus explained the situation quickly and efficiently, leaving out nothing. Diana's expression grew more serious with each word, and by the time Marcus finished, she had her phone out and was making calls of her own. Within 20 minutes, the parking garage had been cleared and a bomb disposal unit had arrived, along with several police officers and a detective who introduced himself as Lieutenant Morrison. Andrew had tried to leave with Emma several times, insisting they'd done what they came to do and didn't need to be in the way, but Marcus had asked them to stay. Not ordered, asked. And there was something in the way he'd said it that made Andrew feel like this was important, like there was more happening here than just a potentially sabotaged car. So they waited. Andrew sat on a concrete barrier with Emma on his lap, her head resting against his chest, and watched the organized chaos unfold before them. The bomb disposal unit worked with careful precision, eventually determining that while the wiring had indeed been tampered with, it wasn't technically a bomb. Instead, someone had rigged the car to cause an electrical fire that would have started within minutes of the engine being turned on. Given the location of the tampering and the amount of fuel in the car, the fire would have been catastrophic. "Whoever did this knew what they were doing," Lieutenant Morrison said, standing near Andrew and speaking to Marcus. "This wasn't some amateur trying to make a statement. This was calculated. Professional." Marcus's face was unreadable, but Andrew noticed the way his hands had curled into fists. "I want to know who had access to this garage in the last 24 hours, Marcus said. "Every person who came through, every delivery, every service call." "We're already pulling that information," Diana said, appearing at Marcus's elbow with a tablet in hand. "But sir, we need to consider the possibility that this was someone with authorized access. Someone who works here." The words hung heavy in the air. Andrew felt a chill run down his spine. Someone who works here. That could mean anyone: maintenance staff, security guards, cleaning crew, office workers. The building employed hundreds of people, and any one of them might have had a reason to want Marcus Bellwood dead. Emma stirred in Andrew's arms, lifting her head. "The man with the sad face," she said quietly. "He did it." Everyone turned to look at her. Lieutenant Morrison stepped closer, crouching down so he was at Emma's eye level. "What man with the sad face, sweetheart?" Emma considered this, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I don't know his name, but he's sad all the time. His eyes are sad. And he's angry at Mr. Bellwood because—" She paused, tilting her head as if listening to something only she could hear. "Because someone died. Someone he loved. And he thinks it's Mr. Bellwood's fault." The silence that followed was absolute. Andrew felt his daughter's small body against his chest, felt the steady rhythm of her breathing, and wondered, not for the first time, what exactly went on inside her head. These moments, when she knew things she shouldn't, when she saw things that weren't there, they scared him sometimes. But they also filled him with a strange kind of wonder. Marcus Bellwood's expression had changed. The professional mask had cracked, and Andrew could see something raw beneath it. Pain, recognition, guilt. "Daniel," Marcus said quietly. "Daniel Reeves." Diana looked up sharply from her tablet. The maintenance worker? Sir, he was cleared after the accident. The investigation found no wrongdoing on the company's part. What accident? Lieutenant Morrison asked, his notebook now open. Marcus ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking older than his years. 6 months ago, there was an incident at one of our manufacturing facilities. A hydraulic press malfunctioned during routine maintenance. One of our workers was killed. His name was Samuel Reeves. Daniel Reeves's brother. Andrew felt something click into place in his mind. He knew Daniel Reeves, not well, but enough to exchange nods in the hallway, to share the occasional complaint about broken equipment. Daniel worked the night shift, handling deep cleaning and heavy equipment maintenance that couldn't be done during business hours. He was a quiet man, kept to himself, and yes, Andrew realized now, he always looked sad. His eyes carried a weight that Andrew had noticed but never questioned. Daniel has access to this garage, Diana said, her fingers flying over her tablet. He would know Mr. Bellwood's parking spot. He would have the skills to do this kind of work. Lieutenant Morrison was already on his radio, calling for backup and issuing instructions to locate Daniel Reeves for questioning. The parking garage erupted into activity again, and Andrew found himself holding Emma tighter, as if his arms could protect her from the darkness that had just been revealed. Marcus Bellwood approached them, and Andrew stood automatically, shifting Emma in his arms. Up close, the CEO looked exhausted, the events of the morning finally catching up with him. But his eyes were clear as he looked at Emma. I need to understand, Marcus said. How did you know? Not just about the car, but about Daniel. About his brother. Emma looked up at him with those serious eyes. I see pictures sometimes, she said. In my head. Like movies. I saw the sad man under your car, putting the wires together. I saw him crying. I saw the picture in his pocket, the one of him and another man who looks like him. Brothers. She paused, then added, I told Mr. Hoppers, and Mr. Hoppers said I had to tell you, because even though you're sad too, you don't deserve to die. Even though I'm sad too, Marcus repeated softly. He reached into his pocket again and pulled out the photograph Emma had mentioned earlier. This time, Andrew could see it clearly. A teenage boy with Marcus Bellwood's eyes, smiling at the camera with the kind of joy that seemed to light up the entire image. My son, Marcus said quietly. James. He died 2 years ago. Leukemia. He was 16. Andrew didn't know what to say. What could anyone say to that? He thought about what it would mean to lose Emma, and the very idea made his chest constrict so tightly he could barely breathe. I'm sorry, Andrew managed. Marcus nodded, still looking at the photograph. After James died, I threw myself into work. It was the only way I could function. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the people around me. I stopped thinking about the consequences of my decisions beyond profit margins and efficiency reports. He looked up, meeting Andrew's eyes. The accident at the manufacturing plant, the one that killed Daniel's brother, it happened because we cut corners. Not intentionally, but because I pushed for faster production, for cost savings, for meeting quarterly projections. The investigation cleared us legally, but morally, he shook his head. I knew we could have done better. I just didn't want to admit it. Emma reached out and patted Marcus's hand, her small gesture of comfort achingly simple. You can fix it, she said. Not the brother. He's gone. But you can fix the sad. You can make it so other people don't have to be sad like Daniel. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and Andrew saw something shift in the man's expression. A decision being made, a direction being chosen. You're right, Marcus said. I can, and I will. The police found Daniel Reeves in his apartment 3 hours later. He didn't resist arrest. According to the reports that filtered back through Diana, he'd been sitting in his kitchen, staring at a photograph of his brother, waiting for the news that Marcus Bellwood was dead. When the officers told him that the CEO had survived, that a 6-year-old girl had spotted the tampering, Daniel had broken down completely. Andrew heard all of this secondhand, over coffee that Diana had insisted on buying him and Emma while they waited to give their official statements. They sat in a small cafe near the police station, Emma coloring on a kid's menu with crayons the waitress had provided, seemingly unaffected by the morning's events. Andrew, on the other hand, felt like he'd aged a decade in the span of a few hours. "Mr. Bellwood wants to speak with you again," Diana said, setting her own coffee cup down with precise care. "When you're ready. There's no rush." "About what?" Andrew asked, though he thought he might already know. Diana smiled, a real smile, not the professional one Andrew had seen her wear in the office. "About a lot of things, I imagine, but primarily about Emma, and about how someone who can see the things she sees should be protected. Supported." Andrew felt a familiar protectiveness surge up in his chest. "Emma's not some curiosity to be studied," he said, his voice harder than he'd intended. "She's my daughter. She's a normal kid who just happens to know things sometimes." "I understand," Diana said gently. "And I assure you, Mr. Bellwood's interest comes from a place of genuine gratitude, not exploitation. He's a father too, Andrew. Or he was. And I think seeing Emma, seeing what she did today, reminded him of what matters." Andrew wanted to argue, wanted to gather up his daughter and go home and pretend this whole strange morning had never happened. But he couldn't, because Emma had saved a man's life today, and that meant something, changed something. And Andrew had a feeling that whether he liked it or not, their lives were about to become a lot more complicated. "Daddy," Emma said, looking up from her coloring, "can Mr. Hoppers meet Mr. Bellwood? I think they should be friends." Andrew couldn't help but smile despite everything. "We still need to actually get Mr. Hoppers from my maintenance closet, Princess. Remember? That's why we went to the building in the first place." Emma's eyes widened. "Oh no, we forgot him again." Diana laughed. A warm, genuine sound. "I'll have someone retrieve him and bring him to you. What's the closet number?" As Andrew gave her the information, he thought about the strange path that had led them here. He thought about the morning he'd woken up to find Emma standing beside his bed, saying she'd had a dream about a man in a black car. He thought about how he'd almost ignored her, how he'd almost told her to go back to sleep, how close they'd come to never being in that parking garage at all. He thought about Daniel Reeves, driven by grief to do something terrible. He thought about Marcus Bellwood, a man who'd lost his son and built walls around his heart in response. He thought about how pain could drive people to either destroy or transform, and how the difference sometimes came down to a single moment, a single choice, a single 6-year-old girl saying exactly what needed to be said. "Thank you," Andrew said to Diana, and he meant it for more than just the offer to retrieve the stuffed rabbit. Diana seemed to understand. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "Marcus is in conference room C at the police station. Whenever you're ready." Andrew nodded. He looked down at Emma, who had gone back to her coloring, creating elaborate swirls of purple and gold across the paper. His daughter. His strange, wonderful, inexplicable daughter. Whatever came next, he would face it the same way he'd faced everything since Emma's mother had left them 3 years ago. One day at a time, with love and patience and the quiet certainty that some mysteries didn't need to be solved, only accepted. "Okay, Princess," he said, finishing his coffee. "Let's go talk to Mr. Bellwood. But then we're getting Mr. Hoppers and going home. Deal?" Emma looked up and grinned. "Deal. But Daddy." "Yeah. Mr. Bellwood is going to ask us something important. Something about tomorrow. And you should say yes." Andrew felt that familiar chill again, the one that came whenever Emma knew things she shouldn't. What kind of important? But Emma had already gone back to her coloring, humming a tune that Andrew didn't recognize. He sighed, stood, and held out his hand. Emma took it without hesitation, her small fingers wrapping around his palm with absolute trust. They walked out of the cafe and into the bright morning sun, and Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that everything, absolutely everything, was about to change. The conference room at the police station smelled like burnt coffee and antiseptic cleaner, 2 scents that seemed to define every government building Andrew had ever entered. He sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair with Emma on his lap, her weight a comforting anchor against the surreal quality of the morning. Across the table sat Marcus Bellwood, looking somehow both exhausted and energized. like a man who'd been sleepwalking through his life and had just been jolted awake. Lieutenant Morrison had left them alone after taking their statements, though Andrew suspected they were being observed through the one-way mirror that took up most of the wall behind Marcus. The thought should have made him nervous, but he was too tired to care. He just wanted to get Emma home, let her play with Mr. Hoppers when they finally retrieved him, and maybe take a nap that lasted until Tuesday. "I need to apologize," Marcus said, breaking the silence. His voice was different than it had been in the parking garage. Less commanding, more human. "For the last 3 years, I've passed you in the hallways of my building dozens of times, and I never once acknowledged you. Never learned your name until today. That's unacceptable." Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, you run a large company. You can't be expected to know everyone who works for you." "Can't I?" Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "James, my son. He used to tell me that every person had a story worth hearing. He'd talk to everyone. The barista at Starbucks, the delivery driver, the janitor at his school. He knew their names, their families, their dreams. And I'd tell him he was wasting time, that he needed to focus on what mattered." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "I was wrong about what mattered." Emma reached across the table and patted Marcus's hand again. That same simple gesture of comfort she'd offered in the parking garage. "Your boy is proud of you," she said softly. "He's not sad anymore. He wants you to know that." Andrew felt his heart clench. He tightened his arms around Emma, wanting to protect her from whatever burden came with seeing the things she saw, knowing the things she knew. But Marcus just stared at her, his eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. "How can you possibly know that?" Marcus whispered. Emma tilted her head, considering. "I don't know how. I just do. Sometimes I see pictures like I told you, but sometimes I just know things. Like how I know Daddy loves me even when he's sad. Or how I know Mr. Hoppers is more than just stuffing." She paused. "Your boy is around you a lot. He sits in your office sometimes. He likes the picture of the mountains on your wall." Marcus made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "The mountains. God, we went hiking in Colorado the year before he got sick. He loved that trip. Talked about it for months afterward. I had that photo printed and framed because..." He trailed off, wiping at his eyes. "Because I needed to remember that we had good times. Before the hospitals. Before the treatments that didn't work." Andrew didn't know what to say. He'd lost Emma's mother in a different way. She'd simply decided one day that motherhood wasn't for her, that she needed to find herself, whatever that meant. She'd left on Emma's 3rd birthday, and Andrew hadn't heard from her since. But he couldn't imagine losing Emma herself. The very thought made his chest hurt. "I'm sorry for your loss," Andrew said quietly, because it seemed like the only thing to say. Marcus nodded, composing himself with visible effort. "Thank you, and I'm sorry for bringing this up. I'm sure you didn't expect to spend your Saturday morning in a police station discussing grief with a man you barely know." "It's okay," Andrew said, and surprisingly, he meant it. There was something about Marcus Bellwood in this moment, stripped of his CEO armor, just a father mourning his son, that made him seem less like an intimidating boss and more like a fellow human being struggling through the same messy reality everyone else inhabited. "I have a proposal," Marcus said after a moment, his voice regaining some of its businesslike quality. "And I want you to hear me out before you say no." Andrew tensed slightly. This was what Emma had warned him about. Something about tomorrow. Something important. "I want to hire you," Marcus continued, "not as a maintenance supervisor, as my head of operations. It would mean a significant raise, better benefits, and a position where you could actually make decisions that affect how the company runs. More importantly, it would mean regular hours, no more late nights, no more weekend calls. More time with Emma." Andrew felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Head of operations? Him? He'd barely graduated from community college. His work experience consisted of maintenance jobs and a brief stint as a construction worker before Emma was born. He wasn't qualified for an executive position. "Sir, I appreciate the offer, but..." "Let me finish," Marcus said, holding up a hand. "I know what you're thinking. You think you're not qualified. You think this is charity or gratitude or some kind of reward for what Emma did today. But it's not. He leaned forward. For the last 3 years, every maintenance request in that building has gone through you. Every complaint, every problem, every emergency. And do you know what I learned when I actually looked at your record this morning? Andrew shook his head mutely. You're efficient. You solve problems before they become crises. You treat everyone with respect, from the executives to the cleaning staff. You've saved the company thousands of dollars by suggesting improvements to our HVAC system, our lighting, our water usage. You see the building in a way that I, sitting in my office, never could. And more than that, you care. About the work, about the people, about doing things right instead of just doing things fast. I just do my job, Andrew said weakly. Exactly. And imagine what you could do if your job was to make sure everyone else could do theirs better. That's what a head of operations does, Andrew. They see the whole system. They understand how the pieces fit together. They make sure nothing falls through the cracks. Marcus paused. Today, I nearly died because something fell through the cracks. Because I was so focused on profit margins and quarterly reports that I forgot people like Daniel Reeves exist. People who are hurting, who need support, who deserve better than what my company gave them. I can't change the past, but I can change how we move forward. And I need someone who actually gives a damn about people to help me do that. Emma stirred in Andrew's lap. You should say yes, Daddy, she said. It's the right thing. For you and for the people in the building. They need someone kind to help them. Andrew looked down at his daughter, this strange and wonderful child who saw things he couldn't see, who knew things he couldn't explain. Then he looked back at Marcus Bellwood, seeing the genuine hope in the man's eyes, the desperate need to do something meaningful after months, maybe years, of going through the motions. I need time to think about it, Andrew said carefully. This is a big decision. Marcus nodded. Of course, take the weekend. But Andrew, there's something else. Something about Emma. Here it comes, Andrew thought. The real agenda. He steeled himself, ready to defend his daughter from whatever well-meaning but ultimately invasive suggestions Marcus might make. I want to establish a trust fund for her, Marcus said. For her education, her future, whatever she needs. No, Andrew said immediately. Thank you, but no. I take care of my daughter. I'm not suggesting you don't, Marcus said patiently. But Andrew, think about what Emma did today. She saved my life. She saw something no one else saw, knew something no one else knew. That's extraordinary. And I can't help but wonder if there are others like her. Children with unusual abilities, unusual sensitivities, who need support and understanding instead of mockery or medication. Andrew's grip on Emma tightened protectively. Emma's not a science experiment. I know that. God, I know that. Marcus ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. I'm explaining this badly. Look, after James died, my wife Sarah, my ex-wife now, she started volunteering at a children's hospital. She said it helped her, being around kids, remembering that life goes on even after loss. And she met children there with unusual qualities. Kids who seemed to know when another child was about to take a turn for the worse. Kids who could sense things about the medical staff's moods. Nothing as dramatic as what Emma can do, but still something. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Sarah's a psychiatrist. She started researching quietly on her own time. She found scattered reports, anecdotal evidence, of children who demonstrate what she calls advanced intuitive processing. It's not supernatural. It's not magic. It's just a different way of processing information that most people can't access. And she believes that if these children had support, guidance, understanding, they could help people. They could prevent accidents, solve problems, save lives. Like Emma did today. Andrew felt torn. Part of him wanted to grab Emma and run, to protect her from becoming some kind of curiosity or case study. But another part of him remembered all the times Emma had known things she shouldn't, had said things that turned out to be true, and how isolated it made her. At her school, the other children thought she was weird. The teachers had suggested multiple times that Andrew should have her evaluated, that her vivid imagination might be a sign of something wrong. What if Marcus was right? What if there were others like Emma, and they could help each other? I'm not asking for anything today, Marcus said gently. I'm just asking you to think about it. Sarah runs a small foundation now, completely separate from my company, that supports children with unique cognitive abilities. No experiments, no exploitation, just understanding, resources, community. I'll think about it, Andrew said again, though he wasn't sure he would. Emma yawned, a huge jaw-cracking thing that reminded Andrew that despite everything that had happened, she was still just a 6-year-old who'd been up since dawn. Daddy, I'm tired. Can we go home now? And get Mr. Hoppers? Yes, Princess. We can go home. They left the police station with Marcus's business card in Andrew's pocket and a promise to call by Monday morning with his decision about the job. Diana Chun was waiting outside with Mr. Hoppers, the stuffed rabbit looking somewhat worse for wear but immediately clutched to Emma's chest like a lifeline. He was in the closet, just like you said, Diana told Emma with a smile. And he told me to tell you that he's very proud of you. Emma giggled, and Andrew felt some of the tension drain from his shoulders. Whatever else had happened today, Emma was still his daughter. Still the bright, strange, wonderful child who talked to her stuffed animals and believed in magic. The drive home was quiet. Emma dozed in her car seat. Mr. Hoppers held tight against her chest, while Andrew navigated the familiar streets of their neighborhood. They lived in a modest apartment in a working-class area of the city, the kind of place where people looked out for each other and kids played in the shared courtyard on summer evenings. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. Mrs. Chun from apartment 3B was outside watering her plants when they pulled up. She waved, and Andrew waved back, grateful for the normalcy of the gesture. Inside the apartment, everything was exactly as they'd left it. Emma's cereal bowl still in the sink from breakfast, Andrew's work boots by the door, the pile of laundry on the couch that he'd been meaning to fold for 3 days now. He carried Emma to her room, tucked her into bed with Mr. Hoppers, and pulled the curtains closed against the midday sun. She was asleep before he even left the room, exhausted by the morning's events even if she didn't fully understand the gravity of what had happened. Andrew collapsed on the couch, suddenly feeling every minute of the strange, surreal morning. His phone buzzed, a text from his sister Rachel, asking if they were still on for dinner tomorrow. He'd forgotten about that. He texted back a quick yes, then set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling. Head of Operations. The title kept running through his mind like a song stuck on repeat. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was terrifying. Andrew had spent the last 3 years in a comfortable routine. Wake up at 6. Get Emma ready for school, drop her off, head to work, fix whatever needed fixing, pick Emma up from after-school care, make dinner, help with homework, bedtime stories, sleep, repeat. It was predictable, manageable, safe. He knew exactly what was expected of him, knew exactly how to meet those expectations. But head of operations? That was meetings and budgets and decisions that affected hundreds of people. That was wearing a suit instead of work clothes, sitting in an office instead of crawling through access panels, managing people instead of fixing pipes. That was being visible in a way Andrew had spent most of his adult life avoiding. He'd always been more comfortable in the background. Even as a kid, he'd been the quiet one, the one who observed rather than participated, who fixed things rather than broke them. His father had been a mechanic, and Andrew had learned early that there was satisfaction in understanding how things worked, in being able to take something broken and make it whole again. People were harder to fix than machines. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a number he didn't recognize, but the text made him sit up straight. This is Sarah Bellwood. Marcus gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I'd love to talk to you about Emma whenever you have time. No pressure. Just conversation. My number if you're interested. Andrew stared at the message for a long moment. Sarah Bellwood, Marcus's ex-wife, the psychiatrist who studied children like Emma. Part of him wanted to delete the message and pretend he'd never seen it. But another part, the part that remembered how Emma had no friends at school, how she sat alone at recess because the other kids thought she was strange, that part wanted to know more. He didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, he got up and started folding the laundry, letting his hands work through the familiar motions while his mind spun in circles. The truth was, Andrew had been worried about Emma for a long time. The things she knew, the things she saw, they'd been happening since she was 3 years old, right after her mother left. At first, Andrew had thought it was just Emma's way of processing the abandonment, of creating elaborate fantasies to explain why Mommy wasn't coming back. But the things she said kept coming true. Like the time she told him that Mrs. Chen's cat was stuck in the wall between their apartments. Andrew had thought she was imagining things, but the meowing had started that night, and they'd had to call maintenance to cut through drywall to rescue a very confused tabby cat. Or the time she'd insisted that her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, was going to have a baby even though Ms. Rodriguez wasn't showing and hadn't announced anything. 2 weeks later, Ms. Rodriguez had revealed her pregnancy to the class. Or the time, and this one still gave Andrew chills, when Emma had woken up crying at 2 in the morning, saying that the man in the blue truck was going to hurt someone. Andrew had held her, soothed her, told her it was just a bad dream. The next morning, they'd learned that a drunk driver in a blue pickup had crashed into a bus stop 6 blocks away, injuring 3 people. After that incident, Andrew had taken Emma to a pediatrician, then to a child psychologist. The psychologist had been kind but ultimately unhelpful, suggesting that Emma had an overactive imagination combined with coincidental timing. She'd recommended limiting Emma's exposure to news and adult conversations, ensuring she got enough sleep, and monitoring for signs of anxiety. Andrew had followed all the advice. Nothing changed. Emma still knew things. She still saw things. And Andrew had no idea how to help her. Maybe Sarah Bellwood could. The thought was both hopeful and terrifying. Hope because finally there might be someone who understood, who could tell Andrew that Emma wasn't broken or wrong or sick. Terror because what if Sarah Bellwood wanted to study Emma like a lab rat? What if reaching out meant losing control over his daughter's life? Andrew finished folding the laundry and started on the dishes, his hands moving automatically while his thoughts churned. He thought about Marcus Bellwood's offer, about the trust fund, about the Foundation for Children with Advanced Intuitive Processing. He thought about Daniel Reeves, driven by grief to attempted murder, and about Marcus himself, a man who'd lost his son and built walls so high he'd stopped seeing the people around him. He thought about Emma, sleeping in her room with Mr. Hoppers, and how she'd looked standing in that parking garage, small and certain, telling a millionaire CEO that his car was going to explode. How she'd shown no fear, no doubt, just that simple conviction that she needed to speak up because something bad was going to happen if she didn't. His daughter was 6 years old. 6, and she'd saved a man's life today. What did that mean for her future? What kind of life awaited a child who could see things others couldn't, know things she shouldn't? Would she always be the weird kid, the one other children avoided? Would teachers always look at her with that mixture of concern and skepticism? Would she grow up thinking there was something wrong with her, something that needed to be hidden or medicated away? Or could she grow up knowing she was different in a way that mattered, in a way that helped people? Could she find others like her, build friendships with children who understood? Could she learn to control whatever this ability was, to use it without being overwhelmed by it? Andrew dried his hands and walked to Emma's room, opening the door just enough to peek inside. She was curled on her side, one arm wrapped around Mr. Hopper's, her dark hair spread across the pillow. She looked so small, so vulnerable, so perfectly normal. And yet she was anything but normal. "I don't know what to do, Emma," he whispered, knowing she couldn't hear him. "I don't know how to protect you from this. I don't even know what this is." But even as he said the words, he knew what he had to do. He had to give her options. He had to at least explore the possibilities. Because doing nothing, continuing to pretend that Emma was just a normal kid with an overactive imagination, that wasn't protecting her. That was hiding her. And Emma deserved better than that. Andrew pulled out his phone and typed a response to Sarah Bellwood. "I'd like to talk. When works for you?" The response came back almost immediately. "Tomorrow afternoon? There's a park near the hospital where I volunteer, Oak Street Park. We could meet there at 2 p.m? Bring Emma if you'd like. Or not. Whatever you're comfortable with." Andrew hesitated, then typed, "I'll bring Emma. She should be part of this conversation. I think that's wise. See you tomorrow." Andrew set his phone down and returned to the couch, suddenly exhausted despite it being only early afternoon. He thought about calling his sister, telling her about the morning's events, but he didn't have the energy. Rachel meant well, but she'd never quite understood Emma's peculiarities. She thought Andrew was being overprotective, reading too much into childish imagination. Maybe she was right. Maybe Andrew was the one with the problem, not Emma. But he'd seen the wires under that car. He'd heard Emma describe Daniel Reeves with perfect accuracy. He'd watched Marcus Bellwood's face when Emma told him his son was proud of him, had seen the recognition there, the impossible comfort. No, Emma was different, special, and Andrew needed to figure out what that meant. He must have dozed off on the couch because the next thing he knew, Emma was shaking his shoulder, Mr. Hopper's dangling from her other hand. Sunlight slanted through the windows at a different angle. Late afternoon now, almost evening. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Emma said. "Can we have pancakes for dinner?" Andrew smiled despite his exhaustion. Pancakes for dinner. Such a perfectly normal request from his perfectly abnormal daughter. "Sure, princess. Pancakes it is." They moved to the kitchen together, and Andrew pulled out the mixing bowl while Emma climbed onto her special stool, the one he'd built for her himself, with her name painted on the side in rainbow letters. She loved helping with cooking, loved measuring ingredients and stirring batter and watching things transform from separate parts into something whole. "Did you have good dreams?" Andrew asked as he cracked eggs into the bowl. Emma nodded, swinging her legs. "I dreamed about Mr. Bellwood. He was in a big garden with lots of flowers, and he was smiling. His boy was there too, the one in the picture. They were planting something together." Andrew's hands stilled. "That sounds like a nice dream." "It wasn't a dream," Emma said matter-of-factly. "It was a seeing dream, the kind that shows what could happen if people make good choices." "And what good choice does Mr. Bellwood need to make?" Emma tilted her head, considering. "He needs to remember that making money isn't the same as making things better. He needs to help the sad people in his building. Like how you help people when things break, he needs to help people when they break." Does that make sense? It made perfect sense. Too much sense for a 6-year-old. "Yes, princess, that makes sense." They made pancakes together, Emma carefully measuring the flour while Andrew mixed and poured and flipped. They ate at their small kitchen table, syrup dripping down Emma's chin, and talked about normal things. Whether they should go to the zoo next weekend, if Mr. Hoppers needed a new ribbon for his neck, what Emma wanted to be when she grew up. "I want to help people like I helped Mr. Bellwood," Emma said through a mouthful of pancake. "But I don't know what job that is." "Maybe there isn't a job for it yet," Andrew said. "Maybe you'll invent a new one." Emma liked that idea. She smiled, gap-toothed and bright, and asked for seconds. After dinner, they played Go Fish on the living room floor while the TV murmured in the background. Emma won 3 games in a row, and Andrew suspected she knew which cards he was holding, but he didn't call her on it. Let her have this victory. Let her feel normal and powerful and loved. At bedtime, Emma asked Andrew to read from her current favorite book, a collection of fairy tales with beautiful illustrations. They were halfway through The 12 Dancing Princesses when Emma interrupted. "Daddy, are you going to take the new job?" Andrew set the book aside. "I don't know yet. What do you think I should do?" "I think you should do it," Emma said seriously, "because Mr. Bellwood needs someone kind to work with him, and you're the kindest person I know. And because we could use the money. I heard you on the phone last week talking about bills." Andrew felt his throat tighten. He tried so hard to shield Emma from adult worries, but she saw everything, heard everything, understood more than he wanted her to. "Money isn't everything, princess. I know, but it helps. And you could do good things with the job. You could help people like how you help them now, but bigger." She paused, then added, "And it would make you happy. You'd have more time with me. That's what matters most." God, she was wise beyond her years. Andrew pulled her into a hug, feeling the small warmth of her against his chest, the steady rhythm of her breathing. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart," Emma said, matter of fact. "You just worry too much to notice sometimes." Andrew laughed despite himself. Fair enough. Okay, how about this? I'll seriously think about the job. But tomorrow we're going to meet someone. A doctor who wants to talk to you about the things you see and know. Her name is Sarah, and she's nice. She used to be married to Mr. Bellwood. Emma pulled back to look at him, her expression serious. The one who helps other kids like me? Yes. How did you? Andrew stopped himself. Of course Emma knew. She always knew. Yes, her. Would that be okay? Meeting her. Emma thought about it, then nodded. Yes. But Daddy? Yeah. She's going to be sad when she first sees me, because I remind her of someone. It's okay though. The sad is the healing kind, not the hurting kind. Andrew didn't know what to say to that, so he just held his daughter and finished reading the fairy tale. When Emma finally fell asleep, Andrew stayed in her room for a long time, watching her breathe, wondering what tomorrow would bring. That night, Andrew dreamed about the parking garage. But in his dream, he wasn't there in time. He watched from a distance as Marcus Bellwood got into his car, as Emma tried to call out but no sound came from her mouth. As the engine turned over and flames erupted from beneath the vehicle, he woke up gasping, his heart pounding, and had to go check on Emma to reassure himself she was real and safe and breathing. She slept peacefully, Mr. Hoppers tucked under her chin, completely unaware of her father's fears. Andrew made coffee at 5 a.m., unable to sleep anymore. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and looked up Sarah Bellwood. She had a professional website, clean, simple, with information about her psychiatric practice and her volunteer work. There were photos of her at various children's hospitals, always smiling, always engaged with whatever child she was speaking to. She looked kind. That mattered. He found articles she'd written for medical journals, papers with titles like Intuitive Processing in Childhood Development and Understanding Non-Traditional Cognitive Patterns in Pediatric Patients. The language was dense and academic, but the message was clear. Sarah Bellwood believed that some children thought differently, processed information differently, and that this difference was not a deficit but a variation that deserved understanding and support. Andrew also found her divorce records, which were public. She and Marcus had separated 2 years ago, shortly after their son James died. The divorce had been amicable according to the filing. No contested assets, no custody disputes, just two people who had loved each other and then couldn't anymore after tragedy struck. There were no children to fight over custody of. James had been their only child. Andrew closed the laptop and watched the sun come up through the kitchen window, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Sunday morning. Tomorrow he'd have to make decisions that would change everything. The job, the foundation, whatever Emma's future held. But today, right now, he was just a father drinking coffee in his small kitchen, listening to his daughter breathe in the next room, and that was enough. When Emma woke up at 7, they made French toast together. Then they spent the morning doing normal Sunday things. Laundry, a trip to the grocery store, a walk around their neighborhood. Mrs. Chun was outside again, and she invited Emma to pet her cat, the same one that had been stuck in the wall months ago. Emma sat on the sidewalk for 20 minutes, stroking the purring tabby and telling Mrs. Chun that her daughter in California was going to call her tonight with good news. Mrs. Chun laughed it off, but Andrew saw her face when her phone rang that evening, saw the shock and delight when it was indeed her daughter calling to say she was pregnant with her first child. This was Emma's life. This was his life. Moments of impossible knowledge threaded through ordinary days, making everything strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. At 1:30, Andrew loaded Emma into the car and drove to Oak Street Park. It was a beautiful space. Old oak trees providing shade over walking paths, a playground that looked well-maintained, benches scattered throughout. Not crowded, but not empty either. Safe. Sarah Bellwood was waiting on a bench near the playground, and Andrew recognized her immediately from her website photos. She was in her early 50s, with shoulder-length brown hair showing threads of gray, and she wore jeans and a soft blue sweater. She looked up as they approached, and Andrew saw her expression change. Saw something like grief and hope mixed together flash across her face before she composed herself. Emma had been right. Sarah was sad. But as Emma had said, it was the healing kind. Andrew. Sarah stood, offering her hand. Her grip was firm and warm. Thank you for coming. And you must be Emma. Emma studied Sarah with those serious eyes, then smiled. You're trying not to cry. It's okay. I look like your boy did when he was little. Sarah let out a shaky laugh. Yes, yes, you do. Same dark hair, same serious expression. She knelt down so she was at Emma's level. Is it okay if we talk for a while? You and me and your dad. Emma nodded. You want to understand me, so you can help other kids who are like me. That's good. We need help sometimes. The knowing is hard. The knowing is hard, Sarah repeated softly. Yes, I imagine it is. She looked up at Andrew. Shall we sit? They moved to the bench, Emma between the two adults, and for a moment no one spoke. Andrew felt the weight of the moment, the sense that this conversation would change things in ways he couldn't predict. Tell me about the first time Emma knew something she shouldn't, Sarah said gently, and Andrew did. He told her everything. The cat in the wall, the teacher's pregnancy, the drunk driver in the blue truck, the smaller moments too. Emma knowing when Andrew was going to have a bad day at work, knowing when her friend at school was going to move away before anyone announced it, knowing that Mr. Hoppers needed to come to the building that morning because someone needed help. Sarah listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes in a small notebook she pulled from her bag. Emma sat quietly, swinging her legs, occasionally interjecting with corrections or clarifications. It was a dark blue truck, Daddy, not light blue. I didn't see the cat, I heard it thinking. Does that make sense? When Andrew finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Emma, can I ask you some questions? And you can tell me if any of them are too hard or too personal. Okay? Okay, Emma agreed. When you see pictures in your head, do they hurt? Like a headache? Emma shook her head. No, they're just there. Like remembering something, but it didn't happen yet. And when you know things like about the cat or the teacher, do you hear a voice telling you? Or is it just a feeling? Both sometimes. Mr. Hoppers helps me understand the feelings. He's very wise. Sarah smiled. I'm sure he is. Do the pictures ever scare you? Emma considered this carefully. Sometimes. Like when I saw Mr. Bellwood's car exploding. That was scary. But Mr. Hoppers said I had to be brave and tell. So I did. That was very brave, Sarah said. And I'm so glad you told. You saved a life today, Emma. That's extraordinary. Emma shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I just said what I saw. That's not brave. That's just talking. Sometimes talking is the bravest thing we can do, Sarah said gently. She looked at Andrew. What Emma has, I don't think it's anything pathological. I think it's a form of hyperintuition combined with what some researchers call precognitive processing. Essentially, her brain is picking up on patterns and details that most people miss and extrapolating probable outcomes with remarkable accuracy. But she knew things she couldn't have seen, Andrew said. About Marcus's son. About Daniel Reeves. How do you explain that? Sarah hesitated. Honestly, I can't. Not entirely. But I've seen enough children like Emma to know that our current scientific models don't account for everything. There's emerging research about quantum consciousness, about non-local information processing, about ways the human brain might access data we don't understand yet. But here's what I do know, children like Emma exist. They're rare, but they exist. And they need support. What kind of support? Andrew asked, hearing the protective edge in his own voice. Community, primarily. Other children who understand what they're experiencing. Adults who don't dismiss or pathologize their abilities. And practical guidance on how to manage the information they receive without being overwhelmed by it. Sarah looked at Emma. Does it ever feel like too much? The knowing? Emma nodded slowly. Sometimes at school. There are too many people and they're all feeling things and thinking things, and it's loud even when they're quiet. That's why I like recess. I can be alone then. Andrew's heart clenched. He'd known Emma preferred solitude, but he hadn't realized it was because being around others was overwhelming for her. The foundation I run, Sarah said. We have a program for children like Emma. It's not therapy exactly, more like a support group. Once a month, families get together. The kids play and talk and realize they're not alone. The parents share strategies and resources. We bring in speakers sometimes, adults who grew up with similar abilities and can talk about what helped them. And you don't study them? Andrew asked bluntly. Poke and prod and try to figure out what makes them tick? No, Sarah said firmly. Absolutely not. This isn't a research project, Andrew. It's a community. We document things with permission, we share information to help other families. But we never treat these children as specimens. They're kids. Wonderful, unique, sometimes challenging kids. But kids first, always. Emma tugged on Andrew's sleeve. Daddy, can we go? I want to meet other kids who see pictures too. Andrew looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Sarah's earnest expression. He thought about Emma sitting alone at recess, about the teachers who thought something was wrong with her, about the years stretching ahead and how isolated Emma might become if she never found others who understood. Yes, he said, surprising himself with how easily the word came. Yes, we can try it. Once. And if it's not right for Emma, we walk away. Deal? Deal, Sarah agreed. The next meeting is 2 weeks from now. I'll send you the details. She smiled at Emma. Thank you for being willing to try, Emma. I think you're going to like the other kids. I already do, Emma said simply. I saw them. There's a boy with red hair who sees colors around people, and a girl with braids who knows when people are lying, and a little boy who talks to animals. They're going to be my friends. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. That's exactly who'll be there. How did you? She stopped herself, laughing. Never mind. Of course you know. They talked for a while longer, Sarah giving Andrew her direct number and email, making sure he knew he could reach out any time with questions or concerns. When they finally said goodbye, Andrew felt lighter somehow, as if a burden he hadn't known he was carrying had been partially lifted. On the drive home, Emma was quiet, looking out the window at the passing streets. Finally, she said, Daddy, you're going to say yes to Mr. Bellwood tomorrow. About the job. It wasn't a question. Andrew glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Am I? Yes, because it's the right thing. And because you'll be good at it. And because Mr. Bellwood needs you. She paused. And because I need you to be happy. And this will make you happy. Andrew felt tears prick his eyes. When had his daughter become so wise? When had she started worrying about whether he was happy? I'm happy with you, Emma. That's enough. It's enough, but it's not everything, Emma said. You need something that's yours. The new job will be yours. You'll be good at it, and people will see you, and that's important. Why is that important? Emma met his eyes in the mirror. Because you've been invisible for too long, Daddy. And invisible people can't help as many people as visible people can. Andrew didn't have an answer for that. He just drove home, parked the car, and spent the rest of the evening playing with Emma and trying not to think about how much his life was about to change. But late that night, after Emma was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Andrew pulled out his phone and typed a message to Marcus Bellwood. I'll take the job. When do I start? The response came almost immediately, as if Marcus had been waiting for it. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Welcome to the team, Andrew. Thank you. Andrew set his phone down and looked around his small apartment. At the dishes in the sink, the laundry basket that was never quite empty, the worn couch that had been his parents' before they died, the coffee table he'd built from scrap wood. This was his life. Simple, manageable, safe. And starting tomorrow, everything would change. He should have been terrified. But instead, for the first time in 3 years, Andrew Stone felt something that might have been hope. In the crisp autumn air of a Monday morning, Andrew Stone stands before his bathroom mirror, struggling with a tie he hasn't worn since his parents' funeral 5 years ago. He's no longer just a maintenance supervisor. He's been promoted to head of operations at Bellwood Tower, a position that feels impossibly far from his humble beginnings. His 6-year-old daughter Emma, clutching her stuffed rabbit Mr. Hoppers, tells him he looks important, like someone people will listen to. She warns him that it will be hard at first, that some people won't think he belongs, but makes him promise not to let them make him small again. This promise becomes Andrew's compass as he navigates his first day in the executive world. His new office overlooks the very city he once viewed from the outside while cleaning windows. The luxury feels surreal. Floor-to-ceiling windows, leather furniture, a nameplate bearing his new title. But the real challenge comes in his first executive meeting, where he faces 15 skeptical executives who wonder what qualifies a maintenance supervisor for this role. When the chief financial officer, Patricia Frost, proposes cutting the maintenance budget by 15% to save costs, Andrew faces a critical moment. He could stay silent, observe, and avoid making waves on his first day. Instead, remembering Emma's words, he speaks up. Drawing on his years of institutional knowledge, he explains why the cut would be disastrous, how it would eliminate jobs of real people with families, how it would sacrifice essential maintenance that would inevitably result in costly emergency repairs within months. His detailed understanding of the building's quirks and needs, knowledge that can't be found in spreadsheets, saves both jobs and the company from future disasters. While Andrew battles corporate skepticism, Emma faces her own challenges at school. During quiet reading time, she has what the school calls a panic attack, insisting that the ceiling in her classroom contains water and will collapse during math class the next day. Her teacher and principal, having dealt with Emma's vivid imagination before, suggest a psychological evaluation. But Andrew, who has learned to trust his daughter's extraordinary abilities, insists they check the ceiling. Emma's gift isn't imagination. It's an ability to see things others can't, to know things that haven't happened yet. When the maintenance supervisor investigates, he discovers a burst pipe that has been pooling water above the ceiling tiles. Another day, and the entire section would have collapsed during class, potentially injuring students. Emma's panic attack was actually a life-saving warning. This incident becomes a turning point. Emma, who has been called weird and crazy by classmates, begins to gain recognition for her unique abilities. Andrew, learning to trust both his daughter and his own instincts, grows into his new role with increasing confidence. The next 2 weeks bring both challenges and victories. Andrew makes decisions that upset people, refusing to cut corners on safety or wages for lower-level employees. Patricia Frost becomes his constant adversary, questioning and undermining him. But the results speak for themselves. Employee satisfaction rises, maintenance costs actually decrease because problems are caught early, and the building runs more smoothly than ever. A transformative moment comes when Andrew and Emma attend a foundation meeting organized by Sarah Bellwood, the wife of Marcus Bellwood, Andrew's boss. This gathering brings together 15 families with children who have advanced intuitive processing abilities. Kids like Emma. There's Lucas, who sees colors around people. Jasmine, who knows when people lie. And Michael, who communicates with animals. For the first time in her life, Emma isn't alone. She finds her tribe, children who understand her because they share similar gifts. The foundation meeting reveals deeper connections too. Marcus Bellwood attends, explaining that his late son James would have loved this work of helping children who felt different. Marcus has been dealing with his own trauma. Daniel Reeves, who lost his son Samuel in a workplace accident, had tried to kill Marcus in revenge. But rather than seeking only punishment, Marcus has established a foundation in Samuel Reeves's name, dedicated to workplace safety and supporting families of workers killed on the job. 3 months later, Andrew has truly grown into his role. Employee retention is up 30%, workplace accidents are down by half, and even Patricia Frost grudgingly admits his approach works. Emma is thriving with her teacher Ms. Rodriguez as an ally and new friends who accept her differences. The story culminates when Emma sends a message through her teacher. Someone in the building needs help, and only Andrew can see them. He finds Maria, a young cleaning service employee hiding in a maintenance closet. The very same closet where Andrew once hid during his own difficult times. Maria's daughter is sick, medical bills are crushing her, and she's been denied time off. Andrew helps her access family medical leave, employee assistance programs, and ensures her job is safe. Maria's words resonate deeply. I didn't think anyone saw us. People like me. We're invisible. Andrew's response captures the heart of his journey. Not anymore. Not in this building. Not on my watch. That evening, Emma explains what Andrew has finally come to understand. He got this job so he could see the invisible people and help them, just as she sees invisible things and helps too. They're a team. Andrew realizes what Marcus Bellwood recognized in him. Not just gratitude for saving his life, but recognition of someone who understands that the most important work happens in the margins, when you choose to see what everyone else overlooks. His daughter sees things no one else can see. And now, finally, so does he. Thank you for experiencing The Little Girl Who Saw Tomorrow. If Emma and Andrew's journey of finding strength in their differences and learning to see the invisible touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful stories about extraordinary people discovering their purpose in an ordinary world. Subscribe today and join us for more tales of hope, transformation, and the power of believing in what others dismiss as impossible.